Welcome, everybody, to the Three Gun Show. I'm your host, Dave Hartman, and this is a special Patreon exclusive interview with Lanny Barnes, who is going to help us deconstruct practical shooting. Lanny, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Dave. It's always good to be on the show.
Well, great. I'm glad to hear that. It's great to see your beautiful face, and I'm glad we talked a little bit about the amount of snow y'all are getting in my home state of Colorado right now, and I'm glad you're staying warm.
You know what? It's kind of chilly out there. We've been getting a lot of snow, and sounds like you're fitting in pretty well in Texas with all the y'alls.
Oh my God. So I lived here for like about 9 months, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And y'all was like the first thing I latched onto because it is so useful in the instead of you all or you people or you group of whatever, y'all is just like it's perfect.
Yeah. So you're saying we should adopt it here in Colorado?
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna bring it back when I come this summer.
Okay.
Well, Lanny, we're here to deconstruct practical shooting. So as you know, we've got 12 questions here that you've looked at beforehand, and basically we're going to ask you these same 12 questions that we've been asking several other shooters such as yourself, and we are going to eventually compare the answers in one form or the other and see if there's any sort of pattern that we can recognize and see if we can break down this practical shooting thing. What do you think?
I'm ready for it. Hit me.
Okay, so first question here is who is good at three gun despite being poorly built for it? Who is good at this that shouldn't be?
I think that's a really good question. I'm not going to name anyone specifically because that's just wrong. But there's a lot of shooters that I think are not necessarily fit for three gun, but because they have the mindset for it, they're able to break down stages really well uh, and move their feet. I think that really helps them succeed.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of like really big dudes that move super fast, and you look at them and you're like, how are they doing that?
Yeah, well, it's pretty easy actually. Those guys or gals, whatever, that can move really fast, that don't necessarily have that incredible fitness. It's because they have a lot of fast twitch muscle fibers, and you don't need incredible fitness to have a lot of fast twitch muscle fibers. You're either born with a lot of fast twitch or slow twitch, and you can change the slow twitch into fast, but you can't change the fast into slow twitch.
Interesting. So, how do you change the slow twitch muscles into fast?
Lots of sprints, strength training, uh, box jumps, a lot of things that work on foot speed and turning it over.
Okay, good. So basically, training and exercise, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, next question. Who are the athletes or trainers that have the most controversial or unorthodox style in practical shooting? Why? And what do you think of that style?
I think some of the ones that do, Cameron Hayes, he's pretty good about that. He does a lot of training. I'd probably put my twin sister and I in that as well because people have been calling us crazy for years, but somehow they still jump on board. And I think the reason why it's controversial is because practical shooting for a long time was focused purely on just the shooting aspect and not necessarily the physical side of shooting. And so the people that are diving into that and showing that actually the physical part really really helps in the shooting, I guess have been controversial, and uh, probably about now starting to get more accepted.
I totally agree. I feel like you and your sister are outstanding in the fact that you break away from the norm. Um, I also feel that this is kind of weird. Like after the Three Gun Nation Pro Series ended, there we still see like the effects of the Three Gun Nation Pro Series, and like a lot of people still coming into the sport, and we see athletes from other areas coming into the sport and showing like, hey, if you have athletic ability, it's much easier to pick up shooting skill than if you have shooting skill to pick up athletic ability.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I guess I could say I was one of them. I mean, I grew up shooting, but definitely had the athletic background, and it's cool to see a lot of the CrossFit athletes jumping in and saying, "Hey, I want to shoot," and kind of combine this too. So it's cool seeing there's a lot of races, or not, excuse me, races. I'm so used to saying that. Shooting competitions that are kind of combining CrossFit and run and gun style events.
Yeah, it's cool. We actually held a run and gun in Colorado, Eastern Colorado last year, and we had a lot of participation and from a lot of people we wouldn't have expected to want to run a 5K with us, but it was really popular.
Absolutely, I think they're just going to grow in popularity.
Cool. So do you see yourself doing anything like that? Any running guns or maybe going and checking out the tactical games?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Tracy and I actually pulled her out of retirement to jump into one. We were going to do the tactical games down in Florida in November, but they just changed the date. So we're still trying to figure out if we can make that. But yeah, I mean, that's on my docket. The only reason why I haven't jumped in 100% into those is I'm still trying to learn how to shoot. So I want to improve my shooting skill and get that up to the level that I want to see it at before I just use the physical fitness as my crutch.
Well, that's what's cool about the tactical games though is like if you've got a crutch you can use it, right? So like a lot of three gunners did pretty well there because they have like the shooting ability. But it's funny to hear you say like you're still learning to shoot because I mean you've been shooting longer than I have, and I consider you like an expert in that area. Can you expand on that for a little bit?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think anybody could probably have the same feeling. You always want to improve and you always want to get better. And I always, no matter what I'm doing, I always set lofty goals, and I have an idea of where I want to be in shooting. And as far as handgun goes, I've only been shooting handgun for about 4 or 5 years now, and I definitely can see a lot of huge improvement there, and even in shotgun and rifle obviously is my baby too. That's kind of my crutch, but as far as getting faster and things like that, there's a lot of room for improvement for me in my shooting.
I gotcha. Okay, so it's like the rest of us. We're never really happy with our performance. We always think we can get better.
Definitely.
All right. Okay, so question number 3 here. Who are the most impressive lesser known teachers?
Whew. That's a very good question. I think that some of my favorites are Cindy, and I mean she's phenomenal. I think that obviously you've worked with her in Colorado before and seen a lot what she does, but um, the ladies of Troy, I think they're putting on a three gun class coming up, and I think that's going to be a really good class because they've been doing it for a while and they have the skills and they're finally putting them together and showing everybody, I guess, the three gun world what they have.
Good. All right. Question number 4. What makes you different? Who trained or influenced you?
What makes me different? Probably the biggest thing is being a twin. That kind of influenced how everything in my life. uh, but I think the things that make me different is my background in biathlon. As far as the physical side of things, I take that part very seriously, and I like to combine a lot of my shooting with something physical. The people that train me, probably, my dad was a huge influence growing up. Uh, Tracy, obviously, she was the biggest person that pushed me throughout my entire career. And then I'd probably have to say the Mitchellicks now. I mean, they've really, Kay and Jerry and even Lena, they've really stepped up and taught me a lot of things, even small things, just hanging out with them and learning from them firsthand, kind of what they do and how they handle things mentally. I mean, they've definitely got it down, and it's hard to pinpoint because I think you can learn from anybody. And I like to squad on different squads pretty much every time I go to a match, and whether they're beginner shooter or experienced shooter like Jerry, I think you can learn something from everybody.
Yeah, I like that mentality. I've learned that from working with the three gun show here because we've done like 250. Well, I guess if you count the deconstructing and the bonus ones, like 300 interviews. And wow, that seems like a lot now. Now I say it out loud, but there's a many things over the years that I've taken with me from people that I would not have expected. Where I've walked into an interview thinking like, oh, I don't even know what I'm going to learn here. Like with Jerry, you're just like sitting there with an orange and you're trying to squeeze him, getting orange juice. You're going to get right, but it's it is interesting that you say that there is a lot to learn from everyone at all different levels in the game. It's kind of I don't know, like an allegory for life as well, though.
Absolutely.
So you said that being a twin makes you unique. So aside from the surface level thing that there's someone out there that looks just like you and probably thinks a lot like you as well, can you elaborate on that and give us some more examples?
Definitely. I think for a lot of people, it's hard for them to understand what it's like being a twin. But for me, it's almost like having a clone. I mean, you have someone that thinks, acts like you walking around on the face of the planet. And I think the biggest influence and aspect of being a twin has given me the ability to really be aware of what others around me are doing and thinking and feeling. And for me, I like to make sure that I'm not just looking out for myself, but everybody around me.
Huh, that's really cool. It's like a forced empathy kind of thing. Like it makes you think of your sister a lot more than you ordinarily would because she's so much like you.
Absolutely, yeah, and it transferred over into the real world, I think, and with Tracy, it was one of those things where we figured out early on that if we either had two choices, we could be best friends or worst enemies, and we knew that we were going to be stuck with each other, so we figured we might as well make it work and have fun.
Do you know any twins that are worst enemies?
I do, yeah.
You
And
do?
I think it's the biggest tragedy because you have such a unique opportunity to work with someone to become better at everything you do. Because you could feel, if you had a clone, you could bounce ideas off each other and work together to become better. And there's a lot of twins that don't see it that way and definitely don't take advantage of that.
That's interesting. Yeah, in my family, we've got before my generation, we've got a lot of twins, and so I've had like grandmother, great aunt, uncles and aunts and stuff like that are twins, and I've never seen any that truly didn't get along. Like we had to separate them in at family reunions or something, but
Yeah.
um, so I had never considered that, and that I feel like that would be really tough. Is disliking someone who looks almost exactly like you.
Yeah, yeah. When someone calls me Tracy, I kind of think of that as a compliment. Like, okay, I'll take it.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, people call me my brother's name. I think they're crazy because he looks nothing like me. So
Well, it's different when you don't look alike.
yeah, no kidding. All right. So question number 5: have you trained others to do this? Have they replicated your results?
I have, yeah. Trained a lot of people to do what I do. I offer a lot of private courses throughout the year, and a lot of people they say that the biggest thing that they struggle with, because I don't just when I teach courses and I teach people how to do what I do, it's not just the physical thing. I think the most important is the mental, because that translates into how everything on your body moves and how you respond to it. And I think that's probably what a lot of shooters now are looking into to improving, is saying, okay, everybody at some point is going to get to the same level in shooting, but what are the things that are going to separate you from the next guy? And for me, in my personal opinion, I think it's going to be your physical fitness and most importantly your mental fitness.
I agree. I think um, there's like a big learning curve when you get into practical shooting, and eventually when you reach that very first plateau, you start to wonder like, okay, well, what else is out there? And then you discover books like from Lanny Basham and others like that. So, what is it about the mental game, do you think, that is so important or that applies so much to practical shooting in particular?
Well, I think with practical shooting, there's so many changes that you encounter, and a lot of things out of your control. Wind, especially like let's say a long range rifle stage, for example. if your competitor steps up there and shoots with absolutely no wind and perfect conditions, and the next day you have to shoot it in rain and a lot of wind, you have to be able to handle that mentally and say, hey, it's no big deal. As long as I can figure out the wind, I'm still going to be able to hit my targets. So being able to overcome, all the little things and, really focusing on what you can do as a competitor, I think can make the biggest difference in whether you're successful or not.
All right, I like that answer. All right, next question here. What are the biggest mistakes and myths that you see in three gun training? What are the biggest wastes of time?
I think the biggest myths are that uh, you see, that's a tough one, because I think that the biggest myth is that you get to a certain point and you can't improve. And maybe the biggest myth is that women can't beat men. I think there's a lot of women out there that are hopefully feel the same way, that eventually, with enough women and enough competition, that we'll be able to compete with men at the same level.
Mm-hmm. Now, so how do you feel about matches that have like a specific women's division, like instead of just a class like high lady or whatever, that they actually have like a ladies tactical optics? What do you think about that type of match?
I think that's good, encouraging a lot of women to participate, and I think it's good for growing the sport as far as women are concerned. As far as my opinion, I don't care what sex you are, or what equipment you're carrying. I want to beat the best shooter. It really doesn't matter for me. So I think it's, like I said, for having a women's specific category, it's great for growing the sport and improving the overall level of women's shooting. But I think at the end of the day, it really shouldn't matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm kind of mixed on this, and I'm glad you brought it up. So I'll tell you my opinion. Like, I completely agree. Like, I don't think there's a reason women can't beat men either. However, when so I just did a video project for Texas Three Gun Championship, and they have their own division for ladies called Ladies Tactical Ops. And so that was a specific division that I covered in that video, just like I did limited, just like I did open. And when I look at the stack up of like the shooters from top to bottom, um, which you're not supposed to look at overall results, right?
Yeah.
But when I look at that, I realized that had there not been a ladies division, I would not have covered any ladies that were out there, and I thought that was unfortunate. And going into other matches, I think that's kind of like not really like a disservice, but I think it's an opportunity lost.
Absolutely. I think, like, just to be brutally honest, women aren't at that level yet. And obviously there's certain things, certain sports, like if we take biathlon, for example, cross country skiing and shooting. I mean, you'd be a fool to think that a woman could uh, keep up with and compete at the same level as a man in biathlon. We had different distances, just with the testosterone and the differences in body types and things like that. There was no possible way that we could compete with a man at that level physically. But a sport like three gun, I think it's possible, just because of it's more of a skill and not necessarily as much physical. But I completely agree with you in that it for a match like Texas Three Gun, it's great because it encourages growth in women shooting. If a lot of women go to a match and they just get beat by a bunch of guys and they can't compare to themselves to other women, it's not as encouraging. And I've seen that when matches do that, when they have a specific women's category, it's almost like the women come together more, and there's a lot more camaraderie, and it's just a better atmosphere. So there's a lot to be said about having those types of categories for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Um. Yeah. I'm gonna go back and watch this again. There's a lot to think on that one. Thanks for sharing your opinion. All right, question number 7. What are your favorite instructional books or resources on the subject? If people had to teach themselves, what would you suggest they use?
I haven't read a lot of books about three gun or practical shooting. I probably need to. That would probably help. Uh, the majority of books I've read have been about mental training and things like that. And you mentioned it earlier with Lanny Barnes. And in my opinion, I've never met the dude, but I'd love to someday. I think his books are the Bible of shooting. He just puts it in a way that really translates perfectly into shooting, and especially the book he did, Freedom Flight, how it's a short little story and it explains everything perfectly on how to associate everything mental with shooting to what you do in everything in life. And I think a lot of people don't realize is if you want to be a top competitor, you can't just be great in shooting. You have to look at all the different aspects in your life. If you have too much stress at work, you're not eating healthy, you don't have healthy relationships with friends and family and significant others, things like that, it's going to affect your shooting. So you need to kind of have a well-rounded life. And Lanny Barnes, he talks about that in his books as well.
Freedom Flight. I'm gonna have to look that one up. That's the first time I've heard of that one, I think.
Yeah, it's probably my favorite of his. It only takes maybe an hour and a half to read. It's a phenomenal story. I think you'll like it.
Cool. Sounds right up my alley.
Yeah.
All right, question number 8. If you were to train me for 12 weeks for a major match and had $1 million on the line, what would the training look like? What if we trained for 8 weeks? Would it change?
I think the biggest, I think that'd be fun. So if we're doing that, you're gonna have to come out here to Colorado because the training, in my opinion, is really awesome. So what I would do in that amount of time is obviously work on improving your skills that are specific to you, what you need to work on, but really helping you to improve your mental training and most importantly your confidence. A lot of people, when they're training people, they tear them down and oh, you got to really work hard on this and things like that. But a lot of people don't realize that it's your strengths that give you confidence and help boost your performance and things like that. So it's bad to ignore those types of things. And I think as far as training goes, yeah, the most important thing is at the end of that training period, you believe in yourself just as much as the people around you.
How do you train someone to have confidence in themselves, especially like in a short period of time, like we're talking like 12 weeks?
I think that's easy. You can help boost someone's confidence in a day. Setting them up for drills that, I mean, I've got a lot of tricks up my sleeve because I think that's one of the most important things. So I do drills and training exercises that will force you to work on the things you need to do, but give you success in those, so that secretly you're thinking, "Oh man, I didn't think I could hit that, but I did." And at the end of the day, you leave thinking, "Wow, I shot pretty good today," and things like that. So for me, I think the confidence thing is easy. You just got to figure out how to make someone believe in themselves and see those little victories in their drills and things like that.
Yeah, and as you're talking, it sounds like as an instructor that would be like a fine balance of pushing someone's boundaries to like the uncomfortable zone and making them grow as a shooter, and balance that with also not ruining their confidence. How do you do that?
Well, I think that's the easiest part. You have to be, like I said, as being a twin, I'm really hyper aware of what people are thinking and feeling. And I think as an instructor, you have to be aware of that. I mean, you can see frustration and lack of motivation and things like that in someone. So if they're getting to a point where they're not seeing success and the level of shooting is starting to drop off, you have to immediately switch things around and change things up so that you don't lose that. And constantly be changing up the drills and things like that. So if you're doing something and because I'm the same way. If I'm doing a drill and getting it. I want to keep going until I get it. But that isn't necessarily always the best thing for your confidence. Sometimes you need to switch it up so that mentally you get a break, get some confidence back, go back to what you're doing before, and then bam, it happens just because you have that confidence.
All right, I like it. What are the biggest mistakes novices make when shooting or practicing shooting? What are the biggest misuses of time?
I think the biggest mistakes that novices do is not is always negative self-talk. Probably, you know, a lot of shooters, they say, "Oh, I can't do that," or "I'm not good enough." You know, I just saw Jerry shoot that, and he shot that in 21 seconds, and I'm not even going to do it in a minute. And I think setting small goals for yourself and attainable, realistic goals are really going to help novice shooters. What was the second question?
What are the biggest misuses of time?
Misuses of time. I think that a lot of people think that they have to work out and they have to shoot, and a misuse of time is doing those separately. So I think the biggest use of time, the best use of your time, is combining shooting and training, physical training. But that's just me. I'm kind of crazy.
Well, how do you recommend combining shooting and physical training at the same time?
Easy. Doing some strength training while you're shooting. A lot of people what don't realize is that you're never going to feel 100% at a match. You know, as you go, you may feel awesome on the first stage, but as you go through the day, if you're or through the weekend, if you're not eating well enough, you're not drinking well enough, not getting enough sleep, you're standing around on your feet all day. By the time you get to that last stage, I hear a lot of people like, "Oh, I lost it. I was really tired. I didn't feel good. My arms were exhausted, things like that." So if you train when you're physically exhausted and not feeling 100%, as with physical training inducing that, it'll make, once you get to the match and maybe not feel 100%, it'll make that shooting feel that much easier.
I gotcha. All right. Now, I'm guessing that's a carryover from biathlon. You combined physical training and shooting quite a bit.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's majority of our training was skiing and shooting, running and shooting. We do plyos and shooting, strength training, uh, you know, all sorts of things. CrossFit, you can do that with shooting. I have a lot of things that I post on my Facebook and Instagram for ideas for people to do little things at the range that can make a big difference.
Yeah, and I gotta say, like, I really enjoy the videos that you put out. Like each time, it seems like she can't possibly do anything more outrageous than that, and then the next time, it's just even more and more. And I really love the one of you shooting in the snow with the balance beams between your barrels.
Well, so some of the things I do, I don't necessarily recommend everybody try out because they
Oh,
can be very
totally
dangerous.
understand.
Yeah, but there's a lot of things. So let's say the barrels with the balance beam. I was maybe 6, 8 feet off the ground there, but you don't have to do that. You could get a board and be an inch off the ground. So if you lose your balance, you just step off. So if someone wants to try something like that, there's ways of building up to the point where I got. But you can still work on the same things like balance and coordination and learning how to focus when your feet are doing something different. Um, but as far as training at the range, you don't have to do a lot to get your heart rate up, and change things up with um, challenging your shooting in new ways.
Got it. All right. Question 10. What mistakes are the most common, even at the pro level?
Probably running too fast, overrunning yourself. I think that no matter what level you're shooting at, a lot of people think that they, including myself, can be Superman on stage or Superwoman, and you end up running too fast and outrunning your ability. And I think the easiest thing to do is just relax and just like Kay. I think she said that one thing that helped both her and Lena is realizing that instead of focusing on speed, focusing on just hitting your targets is probably the easiest and best way of producing a good stage. Everybody's going to go fast as soon as the timer goes off, no matter what. It's just human nature. Like that annoying little beep, it just puts us in a different mode than it does any other time. So we're going to naturally want to go really fast. But if you think about that, you're probably going to go too fast. So why not think about hitting your targets, like Kay always said.
Yeah, and we've been trained since we were young, like with Looney Tunes and the Olympics, like loud noise equals move quickly, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. um, I find myself, like you said, going too fast. One of the things I do is overrun spots a lot. Like if I pick a spot where, like, okay, once I'm done shooting these, I move to this spot here and I catch my next one. I find myself like running right through it, just plowing right through it.
Mm-hmm. It's easy to do. Everybody does it. I mean, you run past a target and you get to the end thinking, man, that was a great stage, and all of a sudden he's like, yeah, you forgot that target. And you're like, oh, I just ran past it. But I think the thing that helps for me is instead of picking spots of where I'm going to stop, I pick what I'm going to do at that spot. And it obviously it's different for everybody. Everybody's mind works differently. But if I tell myself and focus on what I'm going to do at each spot, that usually helps. But again, everybody's mind works differently.
Got it. And do you mean like at this spot I'm going to shoot those 6 targets, or at this spot I'm going to hit my reload? Is that what you're talking about?
Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
Gotcha.
Then it gives your mind. It helps your mind process what you need to do there, as opposed to just stop at each spot.
Right. Okay. And then like when you're executing, you don't have to think now stop and reload. It's like reload, and then that cues you to slow down
Yep.
or stop, either one. I gotcha. Okay. All right. Question number 11. What are your key principles for better and more consistent shooting? What are they for rifle, pistol, and shotgun?
Probably for overall is just focusing on each step in a stage. I think a lot of people, I'm really guilty of this. I try to look at the overall stage or the overall match. And when I break it down to each individual target, kind of like I was saying with Kay, what Kay recommended earlier, and just focusing one at a time, my mind is usually able to process it better and faster, going, okay, got that one, now I'm gonna get this one, and go through the whole thing, as opposed to I just got to shoot this in 26 seconds and shoot as fast as I can. I think that helps me overall for 3-gun. As far as rifles concerned, some of the things that I'm working on are speed. Obviously, in biathlon, we shot fast for our bolt action rifles, but it was completely different. And some of the things that you work on for speed are training your brain for that. Again, it comes back to mental training, I think. And I like to think outside the box in all my training. So it's not just standing there and shooting as fast as I possibly can. It's training that connection where your brain cells fire and activate that cell to tell that signal to go all the way down to your trigger finger and pull. There's a lot of different ways of training that. Same thing for shotgun and pistol. For pistol, I'm still kind of working and kind of reshaping my mechanics. And so I think that no matter what level you're at, you still need to work on those things and refine them. But when it comes to those types of things, the most important thing when you get to a match is learning how to shut those down and just rely on muscle memory and not overthink things. A shotgun, I think the most important thing for me is just getting more efficient at reloads and reminding myself to aim at targets and not run through them.
That's good advice. That's good advice. All right, question 12. And this is a follow on to question 11 here. what does the progression of exercises or drills look like?
Progression. So usually what I do is I like to warm up, and it's very important to warm up your mind and body. With that being said, it's also important to learn how to go from being cold as well, because a lot of times in matches we don't have the opportunity to warm up ahead of time. If you can dry fire and things like that at your hotel room beforehand, that's great. But in general, I like to warm up, just because in training you get more out of it if your mind is ready for it. So I'll warm up usually with something physical, maybe a little short jog, and then warm up with your basic drills like bill drills, you know, drawing from the holster, things like that. Just the basic mechanics, your WMD drill, things like that. And then for me, I like to, depending on what I'm working on, I always incorporate something physical into it, just because I am a huge proponent in that if you learn how to do it under physical stress, it's going to make it that much easier when you do it not under physical stress. So a lot of my drills, even if I do the bill drill, I'll do push-ups beforehand, just so that my arms are a little shaky. Or, if I'm doing a pretty complicated drill where I'm working on speed, I may do sprints ahead of time or some box jumps or, things like that. So the progression is usually try to get as hard as possible, or gradually get as hard as possible throughout the workout or training day. But I always finish on something that gives me confidence. So whether it's, crushing a plate rack or something like that, I always like to end on a hit. It's never good to end on something bad.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. Question about that. If you say, okay, well, I'm gonna shoot the plate rack 3 times and then I'm gonna pack up and go home, and you just crush it on that first one, do you stop there or do you try to do those other 3 to get the extra reps in?
A lot of times, like if I know that's my last thing, I'll stop there, just because I'm the kind of person that I'll keep going. Like I remember when I was a kid, I wanted to make, I don't know, I think it was like 20 free throws in a row, and this was after school, and I was there at home. I was there until like midnight because I had to get 20 free throws in a row, and I finally got it. But sometimes when you achieve success, it's better to stop and enjoy that success and be hungry for the next workout or the next training session or the next match than it is to just pound it and just keep going and keep going. I was at a match recently and I was talking to a guy he said I put in thousands and thousands of rounds before this match. It was a PCC match, and he said when he got there he just felt dull and he didn't have the same motivation that he had even a few days before the match, and it was because he overdid it. You can overtrain, and if anyone knows anything about that, that's me. I spent probably half my biathlon career pushing too hard and overdoing it. And there's something to be said about leaving something for the next day.
Yeah, that's good advice. It's definitely something I need to reflect on myself. I find myself just shooting until there's no ammo left, and like I didn't get the drill, and now I'm out of ammo, and now I'm angry.
Yeah.
So
it's okay to kind of leave a little bit unsatisfied because it gives you motivation to go back again the next day.
yeah, that's true. That's true. All right. Well, that is our last question, Lanny. This was awesome. I loved your answers. This was great.
Well, I hope you got what you're looking for. Like you said, I'm a little different. People call me crazy all the time, and I'm okay with that. But hopefully it helps some of your listeners.
Well, I appreciate that. Your perspective is very unique, especially within like this homogenous area of practical shooting. So do value your input and your opinions. So thanks for sharing them with us today, and thanks again for being on the 3 Gun Show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.